Hello everyone, and welcome to today's InsideLocal webinar. It's been about 4 weeks since our last InsideLocal webinar, so that's given the team here and the team at InsideLocal a chance to kind of grab a breath, to regroup, and to get focused on the next round of webinars that we've got coming up. In fact, we've got 5 webinars coming up between now and the end of June, and that actually kind of sees through this series of InsideLocal. And then we'll have a little break, and we'll probably be back sometime in the fall or the autumn, or maybe even the winter, with the next series. But today, I'm very excited about today's webinar. For the next 60 minutes, we're going to be taking a look under the hood at how social media can be used to help generate new customers for local businesses. We have 3 vastly experienced and extremely charming search and social experts with us today. None of them have appeared on InsideLocal before, which is very exciting. I know that we're going to learn a lot from their experience and their shared knowledge. So great to have you guys with us, and let's find out a little bit more about you. Firstly, we have Dana DiTomaso. Dana is a partner at Kickpoint, and they are a digital agency based in Edmonton in Canada. Dana has worked in digital marketing for over 10 years, and with a sort of prominent focus on kind of local and SMB clients. She's a regular speaker at events such as the recent kind of Local Up, which was a collaboration between Moz and the lovely folks at Local U. She's also a technology columnist on a local radio station in Edmonton, so I'm sure that she'll be more than comfortable with today's format. Next we have Chris Marentis. Chris is the founder of Surefire Social. They're a very successful, very innovative sort of marketing platform that combines powerful SaaS marketing technology with managed services. They work with big brands, big national brands, therefore kind of multi-location businesses, as well as sort of smaller local businesses. Chris is a regular blogger on Search Engine Land. We also have Cami Bird. Now, Cami is kind of content and marketing manager at LocalVox, who are based in New York. They are a powerful marketing platform, again, really kind of focused on assisting local businesses, both independent local businesses, but also kind of chain businesses, franchise businesses, and multi-location businesses, with all aspects of their kind of digital marketing. She is, in fact, their kind of resident social media expert, so she's worked with hundreds of local businesses on their sort of social media sort of strategy. So all 3 of our panelists are vastly experienced, and we are delighted, guys, that you can be with us today, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules. Also, we have people working behind the scene today. We have Linda Bouquet from the Local Search Forum. Now, the Local Search Forum are the kind of co-promoters and co-organizers of InsideLocal, so great to be back and working with Linda again. We have 2 people assisting us from Impresio Marketing today. We have Colin Nielsen, who is a kind of regular on InsideLocal and helps to kind of manage the Q&A, but we've also drafted in Jenny Glendenning. Now, Jenny is a social media expert. She's the social media product manager at Impresio, so she's been kind of parachuted in to help with any kind of particularly kind of thorny or sort of specific social questions that get put into the kind of Q&A module today. So thank you, Jenny, for helping us out. We really do appreciate it. And then last, definitely least, there is myself. I'm the founder of BrightLocal. I am your host today, so I will be asking some of the questions. I'm by no means a social media expert, so I'm going to be handing over the reins of responsibility to our 3 panelists to kind of guide us through today's topics. But a big thank you to everyone who has signed up and showed up today. A big thank you to any of our customers who are with us today. We appreciate your kind of ongoing support, and thanks for joining us on InsideLocal. Let's take a quick look at the agenda. I'm just going to leave this on the screen for about 20 seconds so you can have a look at it and absorb what we're going to be talking about. I have a few housekeeping things just to run through. If you have any questions as we go, please use the kind of Q&A sort of module in your GoToWebinar control panel. That's where Linda, Colin, and Jenny will be providing answers. Any links and resources that we share will be going out through the chat box. So look in the chat box as well as the Q&A box for those. The webinar is being recorded, and the slide deck is currently available on slideshare.net. We'll send up a roundup email on Friday that will have a link to the webinar recording and to SlideShare. So essentially you guys can just sit back, relax, enjoy the debate, and you're kind of noting things down furiously because you can always follow up and recap on any parts you want to with the recording. If you do want to tweet anything, please use the hashtag InsideLocal. And we're going to be running some polls through the webinar. We're running 3 polls, and the idea behind the polls is that we can put the questions that we put to the experts to you, our attendees, and with hopefully 3, 4, even 500 people attending today's webinar, it gives us a chance to get a really good sample size of kind of people who work in the industry and to find out how they feel how they answer specific kind of questions. We'll also be giving the answers or the results rather of the polls immediately afterwards, so you can get immediate feedback and you can benchmark yourself and see how your answer compares to the other few hundred people who have answered as well. So if you see the polls, please do participate. The more people who participate, the more robust the data we get back and the more useful the answers. So let's jump in and talk about our first point on our agenda, which is looking at the true value of sort of social channels and social marketing for local businesses. And I'm going to come to Dana first. Dana, what do you see as the unique opportunities that social media offers local businesses that other channels just can't?
I think social media offers small businesses an opportunity to compete at a scale that normally was not available to them. If you were a small business before the internet or social media in general, you had to, in order to reach a wide audience, you'd have to pay for broadcast channels like TV or radio or newspaper, which is hugely expensive, probably not targeting your target market, and just really inaccessible when you're talking about a very small, like a one-location brick-and-mortar style business. Whereas with social media, you're able to open up channels that previously weren't available to you, target your audience almost exactly to what you need, who's going to work out well for your business, and build a really loyal following in a way that you weren't really able to before.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Dana. Cami, same question to you. What do you see as the kind of unique value opportunity within social media?
I think there's a few different things here. The first thing I always like to point out is that it's free. You can get started really easily, and you don't have to pay anything for it. And then the next thing is it's taking your customer service online. So any conversation that you're having with a customer in your store, or maybe you're trying to reach out to people and talk about your store a little bit more, you can do that so much easier online, and that spreads your word of mouth a little bit easier for you. So it's free. You have free word of mouth that's beyond something you can track, and you can continue your customer service and actually get valuable feedback.
Okay. That's great. Chris, let's hear from you on the same question.
I think Dana and Cami had great points. I think one of the things that we find is leveraging activities that you might already be doing in your company and creating leverage on those activities in free and scalable ways, as Dana and Cami pointed out. Like an example would be if you go to a home show, and you normally attend a home show, you could leverage that your attendance and create a contest or drop your name in a bowl in Winfrey's Kitchen or things like that. Or if you're sponsoring a 10K race, or you're involved in some cause-related thing, or you sponsor the Little League baseball team, social media gives you a great way, and even a targeted way, to take that and leverage it in free, scalable ways.
Okay, great. Cami, question for you then. Are all local businesses, in your experience, keen to get involved in social media, or do most of them just wish it would go away?
Yeah, I just think most of them don't understand kind of the benefits and how easy it can be. It seems like this intimidating beast to get started with, but most of the places that you're going to get started, Facebook or Twitter, they have very easy step-by-step processes, and they even give you hints of, ways to improve your content so you can reach even more people. So you have someone like a plumber who doesn't feel like Facebook or Twitter is a great place for them, and it's too complicated, they don't have time to set it up. But if they are on Facebook or they are on Twitter, someone who has a plumbing question can easily go to them. And the next time they have a plumbing issue, who's the first person that's going to come to mind? That person who helped them with their issue a few months ago.
Dana, when you're kind of working with a typical local customer or your local customers, is there always a social element to what you do, or does it just depend on the client's needs or the client's sort of situation?
Yeah,
do you always try to push social?
Always, yeah, we do try to push social, and in our experience, there's 3 different types of clients. There's the I never want to be on social because I think it's terrible. There's the I want to be on social and I'm willing to put in the work to make it happen, and we're totally committed to doing that. And then there's the I want to be on social, but I really don't want to think about it at all and just want it to somehow magically happen. And why don't I have 1,000 followers already? Those types of people. So I find that when we first meet with the client, diagnosing what type of social approach that they have is really important to figure out what kind of strategy we're going to work with them. But especially when we're thinking about things like the advertising options, especially in Facebook and for targeting, once we explain that to the client and the possibilities that are available, even Facebook remarketing, for example, they get really excited about it and realize that in order for this to actually convert, we can't just do the ads. We have to have that strong social presence as well.
Okay, great. Chris, do you get much resistance from business owners who don't want to engage in social, and how do you overcome that?
We don't. We deal primarily with home improvement, home services category, and medical practice category. Maybe they tend to be technology savvy. Like roofers, for example, have been using Google, Earth for years with to be doing measurement with that technology versus going on roofs and physically measuring, and so they're comfortable and familiar with social, and the other thing I would say is that sometimes we use social in this sort of narrowly defined way that says it's Facebook and Twitter and Foursquare and those kinds of things, but I kind of think social is almost everything you do in digital marketing today. A blog, is social. It's new content. You want people to interact with it, and gee, if you're going to do a blog, you might as well promote it across social platforms. I mean, almost, it'd be difficult for me to think about why I would do a campaign or why we would do any kind of a client engagement and not have broadly speaking, making it social and making, content marketing be a big piece of it.
One of the things to leap off of Chris's comments when we work with new clients is we tell them social is 1% of everyone's job at the company. And so everybody has to be thinking about what it is that they do on a day-to-day basis and how does that relate to social media, and is it something that people would find interesting on social media, and then how can we leverage that?
So Dana, then, is training sort of part of the services you provide to educate people within the business at every level of what they should be doing and how they should be doing it?
Yeah, we do training. We also do a lot of coaching. So we'll work with a company over months to train their internal team and then coach them. This was great, this wasn't so great. Try posting more like this, less like this, and keeping them up to date. Like when Facebook rolled out we much prefer embedded video as opposed to YouTube links. Making sure to talk to them about this is how you should be posting this now, and keeping them up to date, because obviously they have a whole business. They don't have time to keep up on every little nuance of social media changes. So that's part of our job as well.
Sure. Cami, when you're kind of working with your clients at LocalVox, how much of the responsibility for making social a success resides with you versus the end client?
I think it really falls on both, because like what Dana was saying, it's about the training and then the coaching. If you don't continue to coach the clients and work with them so that they can be up to date because they have a business, they're not worried about social 24/7, the more you keep them up to date, the more successful they're going to be, because the more educated they are, the more into social they'll be, and things will become more natural over time.
Back to you, Dana. You mentioned the three different types of customers, and using the phrase, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. In your experience, how easy is it to convert, the people who are really unwilling or who are just terrified or who don't understand it? Is it worth trying with those guys? Is it worth trying to a certain point and then, enough's enough? How do you tend to work with those types of clients?
I think some people are just not going to be into it, and that's okay. And there's, in our opinion, because we're a small agency, we can say, well, look, there's going to be other companies out there you can work with. You'll probably be happier with them. And that's one of the luxuries of being a small agency, where you can say, this is the strategy we recommend. If you don't feel comfortable with it, I don't know if we're going to have a good time working together. This is what we think is best for your business. So in those kinds of situations, it's tough. I mean, there's things like where they've heard misinformation. So, for example, we were speaking to a client who was really worried that if we did a Facebook likes campaign, she was going to get a bunch of likes from overseas spam accounts and not actually legitimate in Edmonton accounts. And so just reassuring her, these are the ways in which we set them up so that usually doesn't happen, and you don't have to worry, you're kind of going to get 1,000 fake likes from Bangladesh, it's going to be fine. and just reassuring. So there is a lot of misinformation out there. And so a lot of our time is spent demystifying, the magic dust that people seem to think you just sprinkle on social and then suddenly everything is better.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. I'm going to go on to back to run our first poll. So, guys, thanks for that. So the first poll we're going to get today is how great is demand and interest in social as a marketing channel by your clients? So this is kind of directed, I guess, a lot of the agencies and consultants listening in today, but also, if you're a local business, you can answer this as well. It's going to launch the poll. How great is demand and interest in using social media as a marketing tool by your clients? Okay, well, we're up to what, 65%. Going to close it down now, and I'm just going to share the results. So what we can see there is that the majority of people said that actually, interest is low, but it's increasing. Only 11% said it's very high, and sort of 40% or so said it was sort of fairly high. So we can see kind of mix of results that we get there, with only 1% saying that interest is very low. So it seems like this actually kind of correlates nicely with a survey we did in our kind of local SEO industry survey back in, I think it was back in January, end of last year, which really saw an uptick in terms of the number of SEOs who said that their clients are getting more engaged in social. So that's nice to see that those two things line up. So thanks everyone who took part in that, much appreciated. Let's go on to the next part of our agenda. Actually, this is something that came from an email exchange I had with Dana yesterday about, she kind of voiced a kind of question she wanted to talk about. This is, I was going to call this engage or die, but I thought that was probably a little bit too dramatic. So it's really about, if you're going to get involved in social media, do you have to get involved, wholeheartedly, and is it kind of more damaging to just kind of dip your toe in or set up a profile and do nothing with it? So, Dana, as you kind of prompted this question, I'm going to come to you. Is having a dead or a kind of much a lifeless profile actually damaging for a business?
Oh, absolutely. I think so. Oh, and sorry, somebody mentioned the sound. We're right near a bus depot, and every once in a while a bus goes by, so if it sounds like I'm on the moon, I think he said, or in the tunnel, that's why. So sorry about that. Anyway, so back to your question. Part of what we try to help people with is that consistency, because a lot of businesses get excited about social media and they post a bunch of stuff, and then you look at their page and the last time they posted was 2014 or 2013, and so it makes you wonder if the business is actually still in business. Are they updating? Are they still around? And so I think showing that there's life there is really important, especially as a small business. And especially if you're thinking about something like a business where it costs a lot of money and maybe you have that one-time interaction. So, for example, somebody who does house renovations, that's a good chunk of change, and you want to make sure that the business is there and alive and doesn't disappear. Same thing with things like plumbing, for example. It's very expensive, and you want to make sure the guy isn't going to take apart your bathroom and then never put it back together again. So the social media can help show that you do have that engagement and that you do care about your customers and that you are alive and well and indeed ready to help people.
Okay, great. Cami, come to you. If you come across a customer that has a situation where they've got profiles on numerous sort of social sites, but they're not active, what do you do about it? How do you tackle it? Do you help them shut them down, or do you just really try and invigorate their activity?
I really try and focus their activity. I find that a lot of the time they signed up for, every single social media outlet there is, and they weren't really looking for what was the best social media outlet for them, because different businesses are going to have different, different social networks that are going to work great for them. Some it's Facebook, some it's Pinterest, some it's Twitter, some it's just focusing on responding to reviews on Yelp or Google My Business, and it's really finding out what is best for them. And while I'd recommend shutting down some of the networks that aren't going to be best for them, I definitely recommend them engaging more on the networks that do. And if they don't have any interest in engaging, then shutting them down completely and just focusing on directory listings, because then they have their information out there, like Dana mentioned, and no one's going to think they've shut down. But they don't have to be worried about engaging with customers that they're not really interested in doing.
Okay, Chris, you mentioned that a lot of your customers are engaged. What what do you kind of deem to be kind of a healthy level of engagement? And do you kind of have benchmarks that you said you work in the home improvement industry? So do you provide them with sort of benchmark sort of settings where what frequency of engagement or type of engagement that works best for other customers, and that they should make sure that they're hitting those levels?
Well, I said that they all do it, but I didn't say they were engaged. There's a difference. Okay. We do it. We've created process and systems to create a base level of social media for them in some of the major social platforms, because we think it's as part of operating a website, fresh content, recency, and proximity are important signals in local search, and having a regular blog post makes sense, and obviously that's great content to post to social social media sites. So there's a base level of things that we do. They all though are interested in doing it. I haven't had anybody be resistant, saying, hey, in no uncertain terms I don't want to do social media. But the other piece to this is like we've created some technology, for example, a mobile app where we build into their process and workflow ways where they can create authentic, organic content, which is really what's important in social media for them to add to what I just said. Where, if it's a replacement window person, they take while that homeowner's sitting there saying, you've done a great job, thank you so much, you guys are professional, you're on time, you're clean, whatever, we really appreciate you doing the work. You say, hey, ma'am, you mind me taking a picture of you with your new window, and you take that picture. We created workflow where that picture gets geocoded to get put in some keywords in the comments, and then it automatically gets posted to a hyperlocal landing page on the website and into Facebook and Twitter and Foursquare and soon others. So we build into their workflow without putting any extra real steps in what they would normally do. They're delivering a job, ways to create organic, authentic content.
So thereby you're kind of reducing the potential kind of resistance or the additional workload on them by trying to streamline the process. So they're going a little step further from what they usually do, but you're not asking them to do a lot of stuff that they're uncomfortable with.
Yeah, and that's part, there's sort of like a couple of, we do part of it ourselves, and we do part of it with them, and then we also kind of go through a questionnaire every month with these folks, because we want to try to find out what's going on in their market with their business. Do they have any new manufacturers they're representing? What Little League team did they sponsor this month? What home shows are they going to? And what races are they sponsoring? Because again, that stuff kind of where I think the failing of us as an industry is where we're just kind of creating generic crap content and just spewing it out there and thinking people are going to engage with it. It's probably a worse offense than having it have a profile of nothing on it, in my opinion.
Do you therefore do a lot of the kind of grunt work and legwork for your clients in terms of their social activity? So you do a lot of it. But Dana, yours is different. Essentially, you tend to push the responsibility onto the client and then provide them support and education.
Ideally, I mean, sometimes we do have to handle social on behalf of a client, but really want it to come from the client and in their brand voice, especially if there's things like questions that need to get answered. Then you're emailing somebody, you're waiting for them to get back to you. If it's actually somebody there who's handling it, they know.
Okay. I guess I'm trying to sort of work out which might be right for different types of businesses. I mean, Chris, your business is maybe a different structure to kind of Dana's. What do you think of the advantages of, Chris, of you holding on to that responsibility rather than kind of making it all the client's responsibility?
Well, we try to get them engaged to do things as well, like with the mobile app. But you really have to make it consistency. Is key, and being consistent in what you're doing. And business owners have so much on their plate, beyond what we're talking about. They've got to run the business. They've got to hire people. They've got financial things they're doing. And what we find is it's hard to, unless they have an internal resource dedicated to it, and some do, and they do a good job with that, and we give them the tools and ability to do it themselves. But we find that do it, with me, do it for me model is what's more practical to get consistent implementation, because at the end of the day, we're responsible for the outcome. Is it working? Is it getting them new clients with the spend that they're doing? And we want to make sure that we're getting that outcome, because then they'll keep on spending the money.
Yeah, fair enough. It's people want return on investment. They want to sort of see it working, and that's kind of what what a lot of AS in the kind of agencies consulting word sort of sell our services based on. Okay, just going to go on to the next poll, and then we'll go quickly on to the next part of the agenda, which is looking at kind of strategy, and we're all kind of building up towards talking about delivering new customers here. So really kind of sort of laying the groundwork. So the next question before we talk about to our panelists about strategy is, I want to know for all the people listening in is, do you have a tried and tested social strategy yourself? So just going to launch this poll. If you could just take 5-10 seconds to give us your answers, that would be great. The more people that take part, the better. Okay, very nearly there, nearly up to 60%. 2 more seconds. Okay, I'm just going to close the poll now and share those results. So in response to, do you have a tried and tested social media strategy? We can see that only 7% of people say yes, and it works well for all clients. Most people say yes, they adapted it, or will say no, but they're working on it. And 5% no, they don't plan to have one. So hopefully we can convert those 5 people, those 5% of people at the end of this to kind of kickstart themselves and generating themselves a social strategy. So thanks again to everyone who took part in that. Let's take that off, and let's go on to the next section, which is kind of looking at the perfect social media strategy. So Cami, going to come to you the question. In your mind, what are the key building blocks for a perfect social media strategy?
I actually really like this because I just wrote an article about a month or 2 ago about a social media strategy, and I think there's 3 parts to it. You have your mission, which is just your ultimate goal for social media. What do you want to achieve, long-term, short-term, whatever that huge mission, whatever it may be. And then you have your goals that help you reach that mission, and then for each goal you have the tactics that will help you reach that goal. So it's kind of breaking down into a little tree so that you can ultimately have this long-term goal, which is your mission. You have your shorter-term ways to get to it, which are your goals, and then you have your tactics, which will make you actually achieve it. So one way to look at this is, if you're just getting onto social media, you want your ultimate mission to just grow your following, whatever it may be, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on Twitter, maybe Yelp, it's just growing reviews, it's just growth. So your goals for that can be, getting followers. And then your tactics change, whether it's sharing it in your email, putting it on your website, sharing it in your stores, getting the word out that you have your social channels that people can follow you on. And if you just keep using that module of 3, mission, goals, tactics, then you can change your strategy as you reach all of those different missions or all of those goals, and it can adapt with you, and it's really simple to put together.
Okay, great. Thanks, Cami. Dana, when you're looking at a sort of social strategy, what are your objectives? I mean, what's the real end game for you with using social?
Making a strategy that can actually be implemented the way that we designed it. It seems to be our main goal. Because we find a lot of companies come to us because maybe they've worked with another company before. They're like, I heard that I have to do these 50 things on social. Somebody had a post, 53 things you have to do on social, or you might as well quit. And so I can't do all these things, and what am I supposed to do? And feeling really overwhelmed. So helping them develop something that is totally doable for them. So, for example, one of our clients is a very, very small brick-and-mortar store. The woman who owns it, she has 2 people who also work as retail people in the store, and the owner does the social, and it's just she posts when it works for her. But we've worked with her, and she can't advertise because of the type of store it is. So she has to focus on organic reach, which everyone knows is very difficult on Facebook. So for her, it's working on what should you be posting and when should you be posting it, and just doing things like, the stuff you post is interesting, we wouldn't necessarily change it. The frequency in which you post is also pretty good. She posts 1 to 2 times a day, but the time in which she was posting was bad. So instead, all you have to do, because we don't want to add more things to your plate right now, is just change the time you post, and that's the strategy, is trying different times and seeing what fits, and then coming back and saying, actually, when you post up at midnight, it's really great. You should keep doing that. So working with a client to do something as simple as that versus another client where they have a dedicated team who does social media and they're looking for direction on where to take their different accounts. You know, the type of strategy we do for that kind of client is more a lot of tactics, a lot of pushing the team every month on what we want to get to. By the end of this month, these are the things that we should be doing. These are the goals we should have had set. You know, and next month, this is the stuff we're going to be working on. So trying to keep it that tactical aspect to it, obviously with the overarching goal that Cami mentioned, but breaking it down in a way that it seems doable from the client perspective and they don't feel overwhelmed and how they're never going to be able to achieve that.
Okay, great. Chris, when if we get more sort of specific around sort of strategy in terms of, say, selection of the sites that a company should be using, whether it's Facebook or whether it's kind of Pinterest, how do you determine which sites and how many sites you recommend a business engages in?
We start out with a sort of a core of, you know, Google Plus and Facebook and Pinterest. And then, you know, LinkedIn is sort of a one-time, you know, business page, you know, kind of a thing. And then we'll expand from that. We're sort of testing, you know, always other kinds of strategies to you know, build into that. You know, we didn't do Pinterest, for example, up until about 8-9 months ago. We started testing it, and we started to see Pinterest be as big of a referral traffic driver with really good quality traffic, because, you know, our KPIs, you know, ultimately we need to get more customers for our clients, and that's either a direct lead or, you know, quality referral traffic that we could see in Google Analytics that, with page views, time spent, things like that, that we could see that the quality is good. And we saw Pinterest was you know, almost as competitive with Facebook in terms of you know, being able to drive referral traffic. We're starting to proliferate, you know, beyond that, because we've got some tools and things that we've added to our arsenal that allows us to, you know, easily publish to other places with APIs to some of these different places. But we test everything, and you know, sort of a, you know, we have sort of a homogeneous group of clients in that they're all around home services, lead generation. So we're able to dial in what group of you know, of properties make the most sense, and then we just measure them against the KPIs as we test things.
What are the specific KPIs you set? I mean, do you look at, you know, directly generating sales, or do you assume sales come from kind of more engagement? I mean, what are the kind of KPIs you set specifically around social?
Well, ultimately, what we look at is, you know, that we can get direct leads. You know, from Facebook. We did a campaign for a client this past winter that that ended up being hugely successful. Cost per lead of under $20 a lead, with a Facebook campaign for a roofing type product in bad weather, let's put it that way, that worked really successfully. So, you know, we've also done the same thing with replacement windows and other places. So we find, you know, with paid social, you could get leads in certain, you know, Facebook is primarily the place that we've been able to do that. The other thing is the referral traffic, assuming that if we could get an overall conversion of traffic we send, quality traffic we send to the website, regardless, organic, whatever it might be, the more of that type of traffic, that traffic that looks like that to the website, it's going to increase overall the number of leads generated, phone calls or leads. We do measure leads, but it's hard right now to connect the referral traffic to the leads. It doesn't, it's not as easy to do that, but I think we're getting closer and closer to being able to do stuff like that.
Is that just an offline lead?
Yes. Yeah.
Right, okay.
It's a request a quote or request information or a phone call wanting to do an appointment set.
What tools do you use, Chris? We had quite a few questions coming through about which tools you use for kind of tracking and monitoring, you know, sort of social traffic and things.
Well, we've got, I don't want to bias any tool set or anything here, but there's, I could say, like Hootsuite, Sendable, many others that allow you to publish and get a lot of data. And I would recommend people testing different platforms, because there's nuances and positives and negatives of different platforms that you'd want to test. But ultimately, Google Analytics, if you set goals up in Google Analytics, so every time someone hangs up a phone, and we do this for different phone campaigns and such as well, but it gets registered as a lead. So we see that in Google Analytics. Every time a form gets filled and different types of forms get filled, that shows up as a lead. So we could start to connect, traffic and audiences with leads in Google Analytics and start to see, and then you kind of look at that with, sort of the the qualities of the audience mix, and three things we look at is time spent, of that channel, the number of page views, and bounce rate, and you could start to put together a picture of how your audience is shaping up, and is it good converting audience, and are you seeing with the audience that you're bringing, you're seeing more leads coming in, along with your organic and pay-per-click and other things you might be doing on the website.
Great, thank you, Chris. Dana, sort of following very closely on from Chris about the performance of different channels. Is it consistent that the same channels perform well across all your client base, or does it really vary? And what's your kind of reading of that?
I think it varies, and I think, again, I think you have to set expectations accordingly. So, for example, if you're on LinkedIn, you're going to have a very different time than Twitter, for example. And being able to tell the client, look, post stuff on LinkedIn, people are clicking it, they're totally engaging with it. It will be very rare that you get a comment. That's okay. And being able to set those expectations and saying, I've been posting all this stuff on LinkedIn, and I see that there's clicks, but nobody's doing anything. It's like, yes, but look at these form fills that you've got. For us personally, especially when we work with B2B clients like accounting firms, LinkedIn sees very little traction in terms of likes and comments, but when we run LinkedIn posts, especially if we sponsor the posts, they drive very high value clients. People engage, they're more likely to fill out the form. Compared to something like a Facebook or a Twitter ad, we're much more likely to get good, solid leads from a platform like LinkedIn, even though the engagement looks terrible from a statistics perspective. A lot of other things that we work with our clients too and well is setting benchmarks based on the competitive landscape. So here's the competitors in your area that are putting effort into social that we're actually concerned about, and then on a monthly basis tracking that and letting them know how they're stacking up against their competition and seeing if their competition is doing anything. We use a tool called Rival IQ for this, which is excellent. I think it's one of my favorite social tracking tools right now.
So what was the tool called?
Rival IQ.
Rival IQ. Okay.
Yeah, it's excellent. You guys should check it out.
Oh, we will. I will definitely check it out.
Yeah.
Going off of what Dana just said, though, it's the most important part of engagement on social are the link clicks, because that's what you're sharing. You want people to go to that. The comments and the likes and the shares are all great, but the most important are the link clicks, because that's going to your website, that's people checking out your business. And like what Chris mentioned, if you have the tracking code, you can track all of that much easier. You can see the ROI coming in right there.
I have a question, if you don't mind. Like, does anybody... We've tried to make Twitter work with their lead cards and all that stuff, and have not been able to do that. I wonder if Dana and Cami have had any luck with Twitter and getting leads on Twitter.
Yeah, we have. It's again the right audience, and its frequency is really important for Twitter. I think, and it also depends on where you are geographically. When you're thinking about a local business, some cities are just more Twittery than others. Edmonton in particular has a very high Twitter-using population. In fact, YEG, which is the hashtag for the city, was the most popular hashtag in all of Canada last year. So we're really busy here, and for a city of 1 million people, especially when you're stacking up against somewhere like Toronto where there's 5 million people, they can't even agree on a hashtag, much less use Twitter as much as Edmonton does. It's a long, cold winter. We tweet a lot. And especially places like Calgary, for example, like the mayors are very active on Twitter, so that makes a difference too. So people engage the platform and use the platform, and part of the importance of using that platform is understanding, is my audience actually here? Should I bother? And am I going to be able to communicate with them, and how often? And again, timing is really important for a platform like Twitter. So if you know that your audience is only on Twitter in the evenings or weekends, and you just can't make that work into your schedule, then don't try, because you're going to be wasting your time on Twitter, for example.
Yeah. That's interesting what you mentioned there about some towns being, kind of more engaged on sort of certain social channels. Do you find that, if you get a sort of small, population, yes, I can imagine there's going to be a higher density of usage in sort of bigger cities, but if you work with a client that works in a small town that possibly is, less sort of forward-thinking about kind of technology, less engaged people, is social something that you just don't bother to use for them because you don't think that in their area are going to be active in using it?
I think with a lot of rural towns, I think people really underestimate the social usage, especially when you're thinking about that most people in rural areas, their primary computer that they use is actually a mobile phone, because dial-up service or satellite internet service is so terrible. Once you get outside the big cities and you're in rural areas, most people will only use the internet on their cell phone. So for those types of clients, thinking about the engagement in that, most people who come to your website probably got there from a social channel such as Facebook, and they probably will never ever see your website on a desktop. And so remembering that and keeping that in mind when you're building the kind of engagement that you're going to have with that audience is really important. And I find that in rural areas as well, having that stellar reputation is much more important, because news travels faster than it does in a big city.
Cami, your customers you work with, I know you're obviously based in New York, but are they kind of spread out throughout the state and sort of rural and urban areas? And how do you see the impact of sort of social strategies working for them?
We have customers across the whole United States, so it's not just urban New York City. It's, towns in Ohio, towns in Oregon, places in California such as Los Angeles. And just like Dana said, some places are much more active on Twitter, which is a much more active social network than, say, Facebook or LinkedIn. And I used to live in the Midwest in America, and the Midwest is a little bit behind other places, but you'll have businesses that do really well on Twitter, and it just depends on your demographic. If you're towards a younger demographic, then Twitter may be perfect for you, whether you're in a small town or a big city. You really have to look at who your customer is and what social network you're aiming for and what the social network demographic is, so you can really align those two and have a lot of success.
Yeah, and if you are going after a younger demographic, then even something like Instagram or Snapchat is going to be the way to go. And so I hope you have something visual.
Cami, in your experience, which sort of social channel across the broad spectrum of clients you've got delivers the most leads?
I find that small businesses like to believe that Facebook delivers the most leads, but I think Twitter has the capabilities to deliver the most leads if you put the effort in.
What does that effort mean? What have you seen that's worked?
It's a combination of just being engaged, and engaged meaning, I have an active page, I'm posting regularly, and then reaching out to people, because Twitter is very much a community. It's different than Facebook, where you can't reach out to someone that you've never met before, but on Twitter you can. If someone's tweeting, I just got a flat tire, and you're, an auto repair service or a towing service, that's perfect for you, because you can locate where they are on Twitter, because Twitter has location services in their advanced search, and you can respond to them right then and be like, I can help you, I'm down the street, give me a call at this number. And you can really generate a lot of leads very quickly through advanced search, or there's different dashboards that allow you to do that, like Socialcast is one, so you don't have to have Twitter open all day.
Chris, how about
and I think a lot of businesses really miss out on that potential. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, a lot of businesses completely miss out on that potential, not listening and looking for those kinds of opportunities. And some other competitor is going to snap them up, or it's going to be completely missed, and then it's a disappointed person stuck on the side of the road with a flat tire.
Yeah, and that person, if you respond to them, they're not just going to be silent about it. They're going to tweet back to your business. They're going to tweet out to all their followers being like, this towing service found me on Twitter. It completely saved my day. And that's free advertising for you.
And so what tools do you use to monitor that? Because obviously, a business owner is very busy. They've got a lot of stuff going on. So how do you help them stay on top of the opportunities?
You can do it a few different ways. You can do Twitter Advanced Search, which is completely free, or you can use a dashboard that has a keyword search. I personally like using Socialcast because you can also mark things as leads, and it's just a simple keyword search, and you can geolocate that keyword search. So if you're located in New York City, you may want to go 5 miles out, but by then you might be out of New York City, or you just want to go 1 mile around you. And you can see if you're a coffee shop, you can just use the hashtag coffee or the keyword coffee, and anyone who mentions coffee you can respond to in a 1 mile radius.
Great, that sounds very useful. Chris, how about you in terms of which channels you've seen work best for the types of businesses that you work with?
Like I said earlier, we haven't had much luck with Twitter. I think part of it is we work with home services, and their primary target audiences tend to be for replacement windows and roofing and things, 45 plus. And I just don't think there's a huge concentration of people that are in that age group on Twitter. We found that Facebook has been really effective, for us. We think things like, there's other, other things. We do use Twitter, but we use them more to broadcast, content. Whether it be the content from the mobile devices that we've talked about, or the or blog posts or things like that. For the idea, the kind of the strategy around social is I've seen you somewhere before, but not necessarily lead driven. We think there's a certain layer of social with content that there are people that use to use social media in different ways, and there's ways to brand yourself or become familiar against your target audience in your market by sort of broadcasting regularly content into those places. But we haven't, the one that we find, or two that we find that drives the most traffic, are Pinterest and Facebook to the website. A little bit of Twitter, but not a whole lot. We've heard a lot of good things about Tumblr in terms of driving qualified traffic. We're experimenting with that a little bit now. We don't know enough to be conclusive, but we've heard that that's a really good an additional channel to be regularly publishing to be driving traffic as well.
Dan or Cami, do you guys use Tumblr much?
We have some clients who use Tumblr, and they kind of leapt on it on their own before we started working with them. And if they're going after a younger audience, again, it makes a lot of sense to be on Tumblr, but also to respect the type of thing that does well on Tumblr. And so I find that if you're working with a client and their social media person understands Tumblr, then that's a pretty easy transition to get them on there. This particular client, it's a vintage clothing store. And so for them, Tumblr 100% makes sense to post on there. For other clients, maybe the accounting firm, maybe not so much. So it's the right audience, right demographic, making sure that there's somebody there who understands the platform and is able to treat it appropriately and work with it and keep it up to date.
How much of the benefit, and this is a question I'll give them to Kevin, how much of the benefit of using social is about, not necessarily immediate lead generation, but about, sort of sowing the seed of a relationship or starting a dialogue, or as I think kind of Chris referred it to, you're kind of putting yourself, something, I don't know you, but I know of you somehow, I've heard of it. How much of it is more of that sort of soft, sort of slow burn, as opposed to get a customer to knock on your door tomorrow?
I think that's the majority of what social media can provide for your business. If you're looking for an immediate return on leads, then you're probably going to be sorely disappointed unless you somehow can make something go viral overnight, which is everyone's goal. So if you learn that secret, please share it with me. But it's definitely a slow burn, and it's not going to start off as being something amazing, which is, it's really hard to work with clients who are like, okay, by the end of the week I'm expecting 500 followers. It's not going to happen. But you can, have that word of mouth, which is exactly what social has turned into, this digital word of mouth that can grow your business for you and really help you over time. You just have to have the time and give the time to let it happen.
How do you So, Dan, I'll come to you in a second, sorry. Cami, how do you justify to a client who's, say, time-strapped, a bit cash-strapped, who's going, okay, I'm going to invest I'm going to spend time in 3 channels. It's going to do, PPC, email marketing, and one other. How do you kind of convince them that social is that other channel, given that it's not going to, have people coming banging on their door tomorrow?
I think it's just giving the realistic expectations of what's going to happen, and that's really why I like the model that I have for a social media strategy. You have your ultimate mission, you have your goals and your tactics. When you break it down to the goals and the tactics, you have exactly what you want to see from every single tactic in your goal, and you have a time frame around it. Because if you just go onto social media without a strategy, then it kind of seems like, what's the point? But if you have the tactics, you have a time frame around when you want to analyze whether that tactic's been successful or not, then you can really start engaging your clients to understand that social media is going to improve. It is going to bring in the leads. You just have to give it the time.
Okay. Dana, you wanted to say something?
Oh, I was going to say, too, the other thing to emphasize with clients is engagement is really important. So you can't just broadcast. You have to engage. And so on Twitter, that means actually listening to what people are saying, retweeting other people, answering questions, engaging with the audience in general, even if it has nothing to do with your business, because that's part of what builds personality for your brand, which is really important. And also on Facebook, take time to actually look at other pages and share posts from other pages as well, which can help build your following and earn you a little bit of karma. So you actually, when you have something really important that you want to post, then you've built these relationships with influencers who can give you that big push instead of, going into your office and hitting the viral button. This is actually how it happens. And so explaining to clients that you have to build up those relationships in order for when you have something awesome to be able to say, hey, these people who I've helped over the years, do you mind helping push my stuff right now?
Have any of you guys had a situation with a client has had a kind of horror show on social where they've reacted angrily to a sort of comment, or they've published something that was just really potentially poisonous to their business, and what have you done to kind of reel that back in, or wrap a protective sort of layer around them? Anyone?
We've had
Who wants to go first? Okay.
a twist on that where the more engaged you are out there, and the more presence you have in social media, you become a target too for a lot of people who just want to get everything off their chest. And so we have a client who's very successful in social, but excuse me, has people saying some really negative things about him, different people, and trying to stay on top of that. And how do you handle those? Has been something that we've been working on a lot. You could hide things easily, but you don't want to hide everything. You want to address things that are legitimate and trying to, it creates a whole whole nother set of workflow and things you need to think through with the client.
We have a client who's a convention center, and so before they have big concerts, we've tried by saying, the elevators are not going to be on at the end of the night, and it's for safety, and here's why. But there's always bad reviews left Sunday morning by drunk people who got kicked out, and they're mad at security. And so if they say something, sometimes they're swearing, sometimes they mention like the name of the security person. In those cases, we try to flag them and get them removed. But other times we just engage with them and say, we're sorry we had your bad experience. This is why we have the policies that we do. Sometimes last things like, why was liquor service cut off at this time? We say, well, it's Liquor Control Board of Alberta, and these are their rules, and you can find them on the website. So a lot of it is just trying to engage and educate people, and then hopefully eventually people will realize that this is legitimately a safety issue, and we have to, the escalators being off at their facility, this seems to be the biggest thing that drives the complaints. It's always the escalators. And so we just try to warn people in advance that it's going to be a thing, and then deal with the complaints as they come in. But knowing ahead of time that that's going to be a problem and being able to deal with it is helpful for them.
That's good. So a bit of pre-planning and kind of being able to understand what's going to be coming up in terms of the kind of issues. Cami, how about you? Have you had experiences of that?
Most definitely, and it really just comes down to coaching and the customer service aspect of Twitter. You have to remember that anything you're saying on not just Twitter, but social media in general, if you're not willing to say it to someone's face, then it probably shouldn't be said online. Just because there's not a face in front of you doesn't mean that people won't be offended by it, people won't be upset about it. So if you say it to someone's face, then maybe think about it a little bit further and see if you'd say it in front of someone's face in a large crowd. And if you still find it appropriate, then share it. But for the most part, it's about being proactive. Like Dana said, you know, if you know a problem's going to occur, share it with people. They're much more understanding. And when a problem has occurred, just apologize for it. People are going to be upset, and they're going to be a little bit irrational to start. But if your first response is to go on the defensive, then they're going to be even more upset. But if your first response is to just immediately apologize for anything that was done wrong, then they're a little bit more forgiving.
Okay, great. We've only got a few minutes left, and we've, you know, I've kind of sort of blended parts of this agenda together, so actually we've covered quite a lot of ground. But I wanted to kind of use the last few minutes to talk about, firstly, about the right content. We've talked a bit about platforms, but quickly about content. Question for Chris. You know, kind of do you find that things like video and images elicit a better response or a deeper engagement than, you know, kind of text communication?
Well, definitely. And the thing that we see gets really good engagement is cause-related tie-ins to social media that we do for our clients, especially our national clients that, you know, national to local. People love to, you know, share and, you know, and engage with cause-related type of events, and they're great ways, by the way, to also link build, because you're able to, you know, kind of go to these places and usually get links from their websites. You know, so you use your social platform to do link building as well.
Okay, great. Cami, how about your experience? You know, what type of medium, type of content, you know, generates, you know, the best response for you?
Overall, it's images, videos, you know, GIFs or GIFs, however you like to pronounce it. Those do fantastic, but we're running a campaign currently for our contest, the Next Big SMB contest, and I put together tons and tons of social posts for it. You know, half of them have images, half of them don't. All the ones with images haven't performed as well as the ones that are just text. So it really comes down to looking at how well your social posts are performing. Maybe for a specific business, text post will work best, but for other businesses, it'll be images and just focusing on images. It really just comes down to tracking your social posts and seeing the engagement that you get on them.
Okay, great. And the final bit is a bit that I always like, is kind of what I call hidden gems. These are kind of like the golden tips. So these are, you know, the top 2 or 3 things for each of you that, you know, if your best friend was starting a local business and they want to do social, what are the things that you tell them to kind of give them that extra step up, that extra advantage? Dana, why don't we go first? What would you say that, you know, if you were to advise a friend of yours on how to get the best out of social media, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to start with one channel in the beginning, and then after they feel like they've got a handle on that and they're building an audience and engagement is happening, then start a second one. Don't sign up for 4 things at once and try to manage them all at once, especially if you're new to managing those platforms, because you're going to end up spending so much time working on social when there's all these other things that have to do with running a business that you're going to end up pushing off to the side. So just start with one and, you know, pick the best one, work with them to pick the best one to start with, and then don't worry about the fact that you're not on Twitter or you're not on YouTube, or, you know, you'll get there. It'll just take a while, and then as it makes sense for you and your business to expand.
Chris, same question to you.
I would tell people to identify what, I agree with Dana, but maybe start with just listening, joining some groups, and listening to what people are talking about. What's of interest? What are the big topics? And then start to formulate your content plan, so how you're going to engage and get people interested in you when you start publishing and such.
Great. Cami, slightly reworked the question for you. What do you think is the kind of most underutilized or the most unknown thing about sort of social media that you think can give a business a real advantage over its competitors if they get it right or use something correctly?
I think just sticking to a schedule, especially for small businesses, no matter if you're on one platform or many, if you're not on a schedule, you probably won't follow through with any of your work. So whether you're listening or whether you're just posting, posts throughout the day, scheduling it as part of your day, because especially as a small business, you have 1,000 things going on. You need to schedule time so you can get actual work done.
So essentially kind of commitment and kind of staying kind of true to the course of action that you take. You think that's a great strategy that will yield success long term? Definitely. Okay, great. Guys, we've run a couple of minutes over. Thank you very much for that. I really, really enjoyed the discussion, the debate, and looking at the kind of number of kind of questions and comments that are coming through. It looks like everyone else did as well. So a very big thank you to the three of you. Thank you for spending an hour, I've had an hour and a half of your time with us today. I've really appreciated it. Also thank you to Linda, Jenny and Colin for managing the chat Q&A. Much appreciated. We've got a few upcoming webinars. We've got one next week looking at reviews and reputation for local businesses. Then we're looking at understanding mobile search and user behavior. And then in May we're looking at how to help looking at ways to rank outside your local area. So the big one for next week, we've got 4 panelists discussing reviews and reputation. Please sign up for that and please do join us. We hope to see all of you there next week. And that is it. Thank you very much to, again, to the panelists, also to the guys behind the scenes, and to everyone who stayed the course with us over the last hour. I hope you have a great rest of your day and hopefully see you on Inside Local again very soon. Thank you.